What's up, guys? Rick from DFS On Demand here with the GC Cup preview for this week's Travelers Championship. It has been a blur coming off of a major, pumping out new content and new tools. So forgive me, but it is the Travelers Championship. Before we get to that, let's look back to last week's US Open. Our lineup was able to cash. Remember, top 70 and ties are getting points in this format for the Gups Corner Cup, which is super cool. We are midway through the third segment, so we are coming down the home stretch here. The top 125 players are going to make the playoffs. I'll show you more about the rules in a second, but let's talk about the US Open lineup, which for us was probably one of the chalkier lineups that we have put together all year long. 5 of our 6 golfers were at least 22% owned. That is not common for lineups that we have entered. We had Webb Simpson, who was 50% owned. He led the way. Paul Casey, Dustin Johnson, Jim Furyk, and Brandt Snedeker were the other very popular golfers. The one guy that we did have a ton of leverage on was Louis Oosthuizen, who for 3 days, that was really good. It was really good to have leverage on him because he was I think he was in second for a point. He was actually tied for first for a few minutes, but faded a little bit over the weekend. Shot a 1 over 72 on Sunday, which was just not going to cut it. Ended up finishing T7. He would have been the cog or the key. I don't know, key, cog, whatever, that would have unlocked us with a much higher finish here. We would have been able to jump up quite a bit. So just looking back on this, getting 6 of 6 through is pretty much a prerequisite with so much chalk getting through. Not really any big names that missed the cut outside of Justin Thomas. So if you avoided Justin Thomas in this contest, you were pretty much getting everybody through. So the Snedeker play, he ended up finishing 77th. That's obviously a bit of a disappointment. Webb, after starting really slowly, had 2 really great rounds on Friday and Sunday to drive up the leaderboard and finish T16. Furyk did the opposite. Furyk made his run on Friday, then kind of faded a bit over the weekend, ended up T28. Casey made his charge on Sunday with 4 under 67. That was good for T21. Talked about Louis, and then DJ, I guess, was kind of the disappointment here because when you're paying up for Dustin Johnson at his price tag, you expect better than a T35, and it just didn't happen. So, between him and, really, I'm fine with this lineup. If you look at this roster construction, Dustin Johnson's not going to finish T35 at the US Open very often. You have him at 25% or 24% owned, which is basically the same number that you could have gotten Furyk, Casey, Snedeker. I think if you would have told me that before the week started, I think I would have been pretty happy with that situation. So where does that put us? I mentioned we are firmly in the top 125, which is the number of players who are going to make the GC Cup playoffs here. I'm stuck there in 73rd, which is about where we've been hovering for a while now. If we actually go to, let me look at the schedule here. So this is, segment number 3. So this is it. So we've got the Travelers this week. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We have 7 contests left. We've got 1 major remaining, and then we will switch over to the playoffs. And the top, I believe it's the top 125 we'll get in. Let's just pull this up real quick. All right, here we go. Top 125 advance to the GC Cup playoffs. So then that's the Northern Trust. So then 125 will be whittled down to the top 70 for the BMW Championship. And then from there, we'll go down to the top 30 for the Tour Championship. Assuming we have made it that far, the Tour Championship will be the end of it. We'll all be playing for first from there on out. There will be no points reset for the playoffs, which is, I guess it's good, right? I mean, because what's going to end up happening is the guys that don't make the playoffs, they're going to fade out when you're only, so when you get to the BMW Championship and, all 70 of you are getting points each week, same for 30th. So we're just going to continue to try and move up each and every week. I would love to kind of solidify my place deeper into the playoffs, right? So right now, we are only in the 125. We'd be hovering right around the top 70. We have to make a move to stay in there. I'd love to go out and win one of these, jump myself up, into the top 10 or into the top 30 at least, and kind of hold my position there for the rest of the year. So where would I need to be? I'm kind of spitballing here, but where would I need to be in the top 30? 671 points. We have 409. So what is that? Like 250-ish points away. So 250 points would be a third place finish, and call it a 25th place finish, something like that, or 1 second place finish would jump you up there. So we definitely have plenty of bullets left. For this week's Travelers Championship, I actually found it pretty difficult to make these lineups here. It is a very good field for the Travelers Championship. I thought a balanced build was going to be an approach that a lot of the owners are going to take this week. I'm opting to not necessarily do that. I'm opting to go with Patrick Cantlay at 11-3, who just by all accounts feels like the best fit in the field, right? It's a guy who is playing well coming in. He has the skill set here at TPC River Highlands. Just every single key stat that we pulled up over the course of the last week, it felt like Patrick Cantlay led that category. So I plugged him in. I also plugged Paul Casey in, a guy, again, 4 really great years of history here, playing well, coming off of a 21st place finish at the U.S. Open. Great skill set if this is going to turn into a wedge contest. But knowing that I had those two guys who are probably pretty chalky, and then Ryan Moore at 7,800, who I was expecting him to be chalkier. Now that we're getting closer, we're 11 and a half hours away from lock. I don't think Ryan Moore is as popular as I once thought, maybe on Monday or Tuesday of this week, but I've got him locked and loaded in there because I think he's about $700 too cheap. Now, the next 3 guys are where I think I'm going to be a differentiator. So I've got 2 players who are making their pro debut this week in Wolf and Morikawa. Those are 2 guys that, look, I can pull it up for you here, have played recently, but have played as amateurs. So Morikawa, 35th place at the U.S. Open and a 14th at the RBC Canadian in the last 2 weeks. Killer run for an amateur, or for anybody really. Now he's going to be $6,900 as a pro this week in a course that, not going to overpower anybody, right? It's, if you can compete at Pebble, you can probably compete many places. And also Matt Wolff, who, to me is probably the best amateur on the planet, right? I don't know what his rank is. There's a lot of Victor Hovland talk, and I think that Hovland is going to garner a pretty significant portion of ownership this week. I'm pivoting to 2 other newly turned professionals in an opportunity to try to be a little bit different, but guys that I think can play well here. And then Aaron Baddeley is kind of tricky because, you normally want to play him in some of these really weak events. I would not necessarily call the Travelers Championship that. It's probably a middle of the road field. But when you looked at some of the key metrics that came up, different proximities for this week, ability to, I forget where Baddeley showed up here. I'll pull up the key stats for a second. Yeah, he showed up in par 4 scoring. He showed up in birdie or better, I believe, and he also showed up in, let's see here. Here he is. Par 4 scoring, bogey avoidance, my apologies, and then strokes gained putting. He was one of the best in the field in those categories, which are 3 that I'm expecting and my correlation model would indicate are going to be very important this week. So I don't make a habit out of rostering Aaron Baddeley, but this feels like the 1 week to do it if we are going to do it. Hopefully that can get us near the top of the leaderboard, maybe push us up, solidify our spot in a little bit deeper into the GC Cup playoffs, because I'd love to be discussing this through the Tour Championship and not get eliminated before the playoffs or in the first round of the playoffs. So let me know what you think. Tweet me. It's at DFS on demand, or leave a comment below. Good luck this week. See ya.